So well done to Everton. Their problem somewhat eased for the time being, but not so Leicester. They were 3-0 down at half-time yesterday against Fulham. They then fought back from 4-0 to 5-3, but the fight back was too little too late. Leicester fans at the end responded by chanting, "You're not fit to wear the shirt," in the direction of their players. Dean Smith, of course, recently appointed at Leicester, he rejected the idea that those Leicester players don't care.
I think the fans are frustrated and disappointed because they come to see their team, and when you go 3 goals down, I understand that frustration. The one thing I can say to the supporters, because they stuck with us to the end there, is that these players do care. Yes, some of them aren't playing as well as they can do at the moment, but they certainly care.
The way we're phrasing this morning, Simon, and I think this is the best way to do it because Leicester fans are now getting in touch. I mean, to you, do they look like a side that doesn't appreciate the seriousness of the situation that they're in? I think it's now positively perilous.
I don't think they're. I don't think they don't appreciate the seriousness of the situation. I think they're bricking themselves. If you look at the way that they played against Everton last week, defensively they looked all over the place. So I don't think it's a case of they don't get the gravity of it. I think they get the gravity of it and they can't cope with it. I think that's the situation.
That does not go well.
I think if you look at the seeds of this, he started in the FA Cup defence last January where Brendan Rodgers started that tirade of the people in this football club, we need to change it up, we need to get rid of people don't need to be here anymore, they've got the wrong attitude. And that's permeated through his tenure because I think he was weak in his management of Leicester, and I think the outcomes and the inability to change it and the change of direction from the ownership. Every owner has the right to change. They don't have to endlessly pump money into it, but the problem is that is now the beast that football is. And there's no right for anybody to stay in the Premier League, but there is a better group of players on that pitch on paper than is currently sitting at the bottom of the table or second to bottom of the table. So there is an element of the fans. I don't ever like fans getting into the mob attitude of going after people and not supporting something, but sometimes it's difficult to defend the indefensible. And this group of, we listened to James Maddison talk about, hang on a second, when people were writing comments about a game which Leicester played in, and he said, you're not even looking at the right game. We dominated this particular game, and he was right. Well, there is a point now where Leicester are staring down the barrel, and it's very difficult for Leicester's fans to look at it and go, well, that's impressive. It's impressive to be 3-0 down to Fulham. It's impressive. I mean, when you're 3 or 4-0 down in a game and you come back, there's an element of cheating in that because it's easy to play when the game's gone. It's much easier to play. Yeah. It's much more difficult to play when you're on the front foot and you've got to achieve something, right? And you've got parity. Yeah,
I mean, Maddison, for one, you mentioned them there. But this is where it comes down to a perfect example of words that are used at a time like this have got to be specially chosen. Post-match, he says, we were not hungry enough to want to win the game and we were not aggressive enough. Now, Leicester fans are thinking, we were not hungry enough? Really? At a time like this? Then Maddison took to social media later on last night and said, what's wrong with social media? Say one thing in an interview straight after a game and it gets taken way out of context. No, James, you said it. He goes on to say, when I say not hungry enough, I mean aggressive and on the front foot in duels, not us wanting to win or realising the importance. We were not good enough today and we've only got ourselves to blame, and apologise for that. I mean, talk about
the same thing, though,
compounding the situation.
It's the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, we're talking about appetite and hunger. If you're not prepared to win your first battles and win the duels and be on the front foot, then you're not playing for the shirt the way you should, because those are the default settings. Ability and adversity and challenges and mistakes, those are things that happen, right? And you can't legislate for. But you can control. The one thing in life you can control is your own reaction to things in your mind, right? And their approach to the game, talk about the hunger side of things, which has been extrapolated up to a lack of desire. And then he turns around and says, what I actually meant was we weren't competitive enough in our duels. We didn't win our battles. We didn't do Well, that's the same thing. It's the same thing, just dressed up in a slightly more palatable perspective. Hunger gets extrapolated up to there's no desire, but the desire that's required to meet the expectations of winning your duels, winning your battles, putting your best foot forward, it's the same thing in a different guise. So he doesn't get himself out from behind the 8 ball. He will be one of the first players on the train away from Leicester somewhere else.
Yeah.
So don't you have the audacity to come on and talk about a lack of hunger or not winning duels, because you will be gone.
Yeah, you can't believe this is the same Leicester who lifted the thing 7 years ago.
Well, more than that, you can't believe this is the same Leicester that won the FA Cup 2 years ago. Yeah. And all that was about that, all the Leicester fans watching them win the FA Cup for the first time. There's new dawn of opportunity under Brendan Rodgers, cementing the achievements of the Premier League, winning an FA Cup for the first time in their history. All their celebrity fans, Lineker and all that crowd talking about the opportunity of what Leicester looks like now. And here they are now, bang.
And bang is Liverpool at home, Newcastle away.
On the edge.
Yeah, West Ham at home. I mean, good luck with that. Liverpool at home, did they get anything from that? Newcastle away. West Ham at home in the final day.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got it all to do. Yeah. So get hungry. Get aggressive.
Well, you can't see. I mean, Brighton is a different animal to Liverpool and Newcastle right now. Brighton is getting lots of praise, and rightly so. And ultimately, you didn't see that result coming, but you can't see... The motivations for Liverpool and Newcastle are much more acute than possibly they are with Brighton. The expectations of Liverpool are higher, so that means they're more acute when it comes to the business end of the season. That's why they're sending goalkeepers up in the last minute to score goals against West Bromwich Albion that got them into the European Cup before. This time round, to think that Liverpool and Newcastle are going to falter to Leicester is unfathomable. There's more purchase on the Everton result than there would be on these two. Yeah. Last game of the season, well, yes, I can see them beating West Ham because West Ham will be safe. They'll be in a European final if they do their jobs properly. In these semi-finals against AZ
they might just get something out of that.
So they might just get a slightly depleted West Ham side with the eyes on the prize somewhere else. So you can see them getting 3 points out of that, but that isn't going to be enough.
Yeah. I was at West Ham on Sunday night. I half thought of going up to Forest last night, but then I thought last night
some atmosphere.
The atmosphere was magnificent. Looking at it, I would have thought I'd be sitting soaked to the skin coming back in a train late on. The weather was atrocious. Nottingham Forest beat Southampton 4-3. Are they all but there now? Steve Cooper spoke to us pre-match, and he was excellent. Just as excellent post-match last night.
Well, we start and end with the 3 points, and that's the reality of tonight. The main objective, roller coaster of how we got there, and I'm not really in the need. I don't really want to pick the bones out of the whole game yet. I don't think we need to. I think the main things that I'm thinking about is the quality that we showed in the goals that we scored, recovering from mistakes in the goals that we conceded, and some other bits of play. But the most important thing was the togetherness and the spirit. We're really good. We've had that all season. We showed it again tonight. Real good connection with the supporters, as everyone sees when they come here. And in the end, it was all enough to get us the 3 points we were desperate for.
I noticed Evangelos Marinakis was there watching on.
Gibbs White was good last night, wasn't he?
Gibbs White was tremendous. Would it be a real against all the odds achievement for Cooper if he keeps Forest up and they keep themselves up?
Depends whose eyes you're looking at it through. If you're looking at it through the eyes of the owner, probably not, because it's what he expected, and that's what he spent X amounts of hundreds of millions of pounds on. Whether it was spent wisely, different discussion. Certainly Lingard, not. But when you get into the territory of the football world, looking at a side that's been out of the Premier League for 23 years, looking at a side that's been really poor away from home all season, and then you could see them wobbling during courses of the season, I think it's above expectation. I think staying in the division, they've done remarkably well if they manage to achieve it. Does it back the idea that Marinakis rode back against the orthodoxy of taking out managers when it looks like they've got their first wobble? Well, I think you've got to take it on a case-by-case basis, haven't you? I'm in the camp of don't tell me what you've done for me previously, tell me what you're going to do for me next. And so the idea that because he got them promoted should be the only reason he stayed in the job. But it's difficult to see 3 months into a season with all the challenge, 2 months into the season, all the challenges that Forest were having. Because they did have a depleted squad, whether we like it or we don't, and whoever bought the players, we can argue this one to the cows come home. But they needed to have players bought because they had a squad that was being, had been diminished by the nature of the contracts they had with players on loan deals, left, right and centre, boys like Jed Spence going off to play for Tottenham's reserves and whatever else, all that component parts of Forest that got them promoted needed to be replaced. So I'm glad for him. And so, I made the observation before you get to make it that 2 or 3 years ago he was a bridesmaid. Because he kept on getting Swansea into playoffs and never getting them promoted. But he's a decent manager. I don't think he's the Messiah, but for Forest he will be, because he's got them into the Premier League, and if he keeps them there, then they will, they'll put a statue outside the City ground alongside Clough.
I think it was always going to be like this for them, was it not though? I mean, get up, yes, after all these years, sure. The new personnel on the playing side, but stay up. That's the challenge. Next season's different.
But it doesn't have to be like that, does it? Because it wasn't like that for Sheffield United in their first season, and it wasn't like that for Swansea when they went up. It hasn't been like that for other sides that have gone up. It was like that for Forest, and may well just be because of the very things that we just spoke about. Which is when these teams have gone up, like Swansea and Sheffield United, they kept the core of the side that got them promoted. He hasn't done that. And also, of course, there are issues around quality, and the second season gives you an opportunity to do one of two things. improve the quality or get caught out by not changing because people have worked you out. Sheffield United got caught out by not changing because people worked them out. Cooper, I think, is a better coach than Chris Wilder.
Sure.
No one will be surprised to hear me say that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.